Hi, this is Professor Favors, and I want to take some time to introduce you to the article titled Self Control and Grit Related but Separable Determinants of Success. And just to give you some insight into the main arguments. So I'm on the webpage. If you follow the link from eCampus, you will be able to access this webpage here. And of course, you can download it as a PDF, but I want to stay on this webpage. And I want to give you some ideas about how you might format. So that means you need to be able to recognize the information for formatting for electronic sources. And there's a tutorial, and then there's some MLA topics videos, as well as some downloadable documents on eCampus. So when we are formatting a scholarly source, we always look at the names of the authors, and we look at the order of the authors. So this information is ordered. Angela Duckworth is first author. James J. Gross is second author. You do not reinterpret or restructure or put one before the other. This is a scholarly research source. And there is a difference between one person being the first author in terms of credibility, expert status, etc., and another person being the second author, as in James J. Gross. Also, pay attention to the fact that Angela Duckworth may also be referenced as Angela Lee Duckworth or Angela L. Duckworth, and then James J. Gross. But whatever you see on the source material is what you use to format the source. Also, when we are looking at the title, titles are always um, formatted in quotation marks. So this is the title of the work. This title of the work is housed within a larger source. The larger source is the actual name of the journal. And if you click this link, you will be able to access the full title of the journal. I don't want to do it here because I don't want to leave this page. But the title of the journal, which is a publication, can be both print and online, is Current Directions in Psychological Science. So to get the full information, you would have to click that link. So we format this in quotation marks, and the title of the work, the title of the journal, which works like a book, or where this article here is housed in this larger work here, this would be formatted in italics. And then you have other information, year of publication, month. Uh, 23 here is volume number. 5 here is issue number, and this is the page count, 319 to 325. And then you'll always see DOI, which is called digital object identifier. So it's just a shorter way to um, shorten the URL. And the URL here, or the website address, is where this particular article is housed. So you could either use this information here or this information here. And so this is just your basic information for how to format the source, and that information is on eCampus. So let's look at the abstract and read it for a minute, and then I'll go over it. So other than talent and opportunity, what makes some people more successful than others? One important determinant of success is self-control, the capacity to regulate attention, emotion, and behavior in the presence of temptation. A second important determinant of success is grit, the tenacious pursuit of a dominant superordinate goal despite setbacks. Okay, these are the definitions the authors are defining within the context of their work. So then here's their thesis: self-control and grit are strongly correlated, but not perfectly so. That is the thesis of the work. That is the argument of the work. What that is suggesting to you, that how we have viewed self-control and grit as being interchangeable or being similarly defined, they are now showing you through this work that they are not the same. There is some correlation. If you see self-control, you might see grit, or if you see grit, you might see self-control. But they are correlated, but they're not perfectly so, meaning that they are not identical. We should not continue to define them identically. All right, so here's your thesis. This means that some people with high levels of self control capably handle temptations but do not consistently pursue a dominant goal. Likewise, some exceptional achievers are prodigiously gritty but succumb to temptations in domains other than their chosen life passion. So stop right here. So if you're looking at this sentence here, this means that some people with high levels of self-control handle temptations but do not consistently pursue a dominant goal. The way I define these people are the types of people who can keep a job, hold a job for 25 years and then retire, but they're not going to necessarily go after a dream, which is pursue a dominant goal. Um, in some people's minds, a dominant goal could be to stay on the job for 25 years. But then if you find that person thinking about or reflecting on hobbies that they could have turned into some sort of commercial thing and turned into a business, and you hear them kind of regretting not doing that, then that was likely actually the dominant goal. But they decided to stay on the job. They are told what to do by a supervisor or manager, and they will stay on the job and be stable and have a house and be successful in other areas of their life. But they're not going to pursue a dominant goal, meaning that they're not necessarily going to pursue their dream. On the other hand, likewise, some exceptional achievers are prodigiously gritty but succumb to temptations in domains other than their chosen life passion. These are the people who are very gritty. They are these are the people who may be engineers, mathematics, biology, types of people who study long, study hard, but they're not getting the immediate gratification that comes with the long-term study. So they may jump off one path of being prodigiously gritty and succumb to the temptation of the dangling the little bell of success, right? The immediate gratification. They will get off one path, get on another path, be successful on that path, and think that is success. However, and it can be success in some areas. However, if they initially set one goal and then veered off that goal to get on another goal, and it was a major goal, this can't be sort of like an option. This because we all have goals that may be options. No, this is a major goal to complete something, and they dropped out of school, or they decided to go a whole different route. Then they are really considered. They really stop their process. That's a failure. They may not determine it as a failure, but it was an initial goal that they stopped and did not complete. And if you don't complete the goal, it's considered a failure. And so on down the road, there is that goal that you did not complete that you will eventually have to complete. So that's the difference that I think there. So understanding how goals are hierarchically organized clarifies how self-control and grit are related but distinct. Self-control, here is another definition. Self-control entails aligning actions with any value goal despite momentarily more alluring alternatives. Okay. Grit, in contrast, entails having and working assiduously toward a single challenging superordinate goal through thick and thin on a timescale of years or even decades. These are the people that you will often see probably their goal is to cure cancer or find a cure for cancer or find a cure for HIV/AIDS or find a cure for uh, world hunger or something like that. And these are the people who will stick with that goal throughout their lifetime and then pass the baton to the next person who is in search of a cure as well. And so, although both self control and grit entail aligning actions with intentions, they operate in different ways and at different time scales. This hierarchical goal framework suggests novel directions for basic and applied research on success. So the goal is to look at the different ways you can achieve success. You can achieve success using self-control as one method, as one determinant, and you can achieve success using grit as another determinant. Okay, so keep this in mind. And then also remember that here's your thesis: self control and grit are strongly correlated, but not perfectly so. So always stay within the context of the work, how the authors are defining self control and grit. You are not going to a dictionary to try to find that information. You're not going to ask a friend for that information. You're not going to rely on your memory of that information. You are only going to rely on the in-text information. This is the immediate text. This is not a secondary text. This is a primary text. And so you want to spend time only on this text as you learn how to integrate this material. So now let's begin reading some aspects of it. So why are some people more successful than others? One obvious answer is talent, another is opportunity. But even people who have comparable levels of talent and opportunity often enjoy strikingly different levels of success. Applying the scientific method to this age old question has yielded important new insights regarding the determinants of both everyday success and extraordinary achievement. What is lacking and of central interest in this article is an integrative framework for understanding the requirements for these two kinds of success. So that's just setup material, but I do want you to pay attention to the presentation of historical information, meaning that as you read a scholarly source, you will always have cited material in the information in terms of what others have thought, and so you have to know the difference between when Angela Duckworth and James J. Gross is speaking, uh, and when they are citing material within their work, and when those individuals are speaking. So let's read this for a minute so I can give you some insight. So the idea that the determinants of everyday success differ from the determinants of extraordinary achievement goes back to the earliest days of psychology. Galton in 1869 2006 contrasted self denial in the face of hourly temptations with what he considered, other than talent, to be the essential features of high achievers, namely zeal and the capacity for hard labor. What Galton termed self denial is now referred to as self control. Pay attention to that. The two authors are presenting a scholarly source on this particular topic that was in the past, and it was referred to by Galton as self denial. However, the shift is to now. So now referred to as self control. So we are not looking at self denial in the same way as self control. We are saying that we are removing our understanding of self denial and looking at it primarily as self control, which includes both inhibiting strong but ultimately undesirable impulses and activating weak but ultimately desirable impulses. Galton's conception of zeal and the capacity for hard work corresponds to grit, a newer construct defined as passion and perseverance toward especially long-term goals. I'm going to end up having to do a MLA topic video on indirect sources. So when you see a source um, integrating other sources, so this is your main source, and then your source is integrating other sources. These are considered indirect sources for you because you don't have access to those sources unless you click the links in all these different places, read all of that information, and then try to integrate it yourself. But because they are considered indirect sources, you would have to make sure that you format it appropriately in MLA, and I will have to do a separate video on that. Okay. So today, we are shifting from, we're still in the concept of now, and we're still in the concept of today. So today, self-control and grit are sometimes used interchangeably. However, despite overlapping key underlying psychological processes, self-control and grit are not identical. So this is now supporting the larger thesis that I showed you in the beginning, that self-control and grit are strongly correlated, but not perfectly so, meaning that they are not identical. Okay. And so they're not identical. To understand the similarities and differences, we employ a hierarchical goal framework that draws on contemporary goal theories. This integrative perspective generates several testable predictions and also sharpens prescriptions for improving success outcomes. Pay attention to when an author or authors are using certain terminology, phraseology within their work. So if you were integrating this term hierarchical goal framework, then you would format it in quotation marks because it is specific to their work. There's a difference between integrative framework and then hierarchical goal framework, and you want to be sure that you format it formatted for MLA in quotation marks, and then add a citation. So the citation then would be parentheses, Duckworth and Gross, and this is likely on 319, page 319, close parentheses, and then period. And so all that information is also on eCampus. So the authors are still bringing in historical information, as you see here, like Galton, both Freud and James. So early 20th century, late 19th century, speculated that the capacity to regulate attention, emotion, and behavior was essential to everyday success. Self-control, like the related constructs of ego strength, effortful control, and big five conscientiousness, is associated with positive life outcomes. So we are in the section of self-control, resisting the hourly temptations. And the authors are providing you information about how we should perceive self-control. Self-control is connected to positive life outcomes. And these are the different scholars who have concluded that. Whenever you see, again, authors referencing other cited material, these are conclusions. These are considered conclusions, because otherwise the authors would have to integrate everything. But these authors came to the conclusion that self-control is related to positive life outcomes. Now, positive life outcomes is a very broad term. How is that further defined? And so you have to continue to read uh, to get an understanding about it. So let's skip to perspective. Perspective longitudinal studies has confirmed that higher levels of self-control earlier in life predict later academic achievement and attainment. So that's your first definition of positive life outcomes, right? Later academic achievement and attainment. Then we have further definitions. So employment, earnings, savings, physical health, right? So if you exercise self-control, you will have employment, you will have earnings, you will have savings, you will have physical health. And then self-control predicts many consequential outcomes, or at least as well as either general intelligence or socioeconomic status, right? So again, positive life outcomes is a broad term. It has to be further defined. It is further defined as later academic achievement and attainment, employment, earnings, savings, physical health, general intelligence, socioeconomic status. Okay, and that's how the terms are defined. When I usually teach this in a classroom, I like to focus on this paragraph here. So I'm going to read it and then give you some insight over it. So the psychological processes that underlie self-control, once so shrouded in mystery that they were summarily referred to as willpower, that's how we perceived it, are now coming into focus. Okay. It is now understood that self-control is required when there is a conflict between two possible action tendencies, impulses, one corresponding to a momentarily alluring goal and the other corresponding to a more valued goal whose benefits are deferred in time, more abstract, or otherwise more psychologically distant. Let's stop here. Again, when you see terms like alluring goal here, alluring goal, valued goal, right? These are terms that are specific to the work in the same way that hierarchical goal framework is. We don't speak like that every day. We don't say, I have this valued goal, this more valued goal, but this alluring goal is really distracting. We don't speak like that. So because we don't talk like that on an everyday basis, and if you integrate these terms within your paper, format them in quotation marks, add a citation at the end, because it's specific to their work. Regardless of the particular type of impulses requiring adjudication, gobbling up one sweet and chewy marshmallow immediately versus waiting for two, watching television versus going to the gym, it seems that common prefrontal brain areas are involved in successful top-down regulation, right? So, where have you heard this term adjudication? That's a legal term, that's a courtroom term. And so usually if you've spent time in jail or if you've had to go through the courthouse, adjudication is something that the judge does. So get a picture in mind, say maybe like a Law and Order scene where you have the prosecuting side and the defense side, and then there's a defender sitting at the defense table. And then you see the judge and all of the other actors and players in the courthouse. Then, of course, some visitors. And the judge is hearing the cases from both sides, right? He's hearing case law, he's hearing arguments, he's hearing a number of things concerning each person's case. And then the judge rests the case and goes into his judge's quarters. And then he reviews case law, he reviews research, he reviews everything that the prosecuting team provided and the defense team provided, and any other testimony, any other expert testimony. And then once he finishes his process, he comes out, sits at the judge's bench, and then he adjudicates. He adjudicates the case. He pronounces judgment. And so, what the authors are suggesting then is that the same sort of level of processing that we do or that we see with judges making decisions, adjudicating cases, we should do before we decide to gobble up one sweet chewy marshmallow instead of waiting for two, or watching television versus going to the gym. That self-control, because we're still in the section of self-control, should be a much more thoughtful, methodical, organized, strategic process than merely saying I'm exercising self-control, right? And so they're saying that it should be more of a process that you control, that is required when there's a conflict between two possible action tendencies. And then in addition to directly modulating bottom-up impulses, both children and adults are capable of deploying an array of cognitive and behavioral strategies seconds, minutes, or even hours in advance of confronting temptations. Meaning that if you know that once you get home, it's going to be hard for you to do your homework, it might be beneficial to you to stay at the campus, work on a few things for 30 minutes to an hour, and then leave to go home. Go to the computer lab, go to the library, get a little bit of work done. That is you deploying an array of cognitive behavior strategies, seconds, minutes, or even hours. In other words, you know yourself. You know whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish, and whether or not you will not once you get home. But if you take some time to do outlining, you take some time to write a little bit here and there, it should help you. In general, the capacity to exercise self-control appears to improve from infancy through adulthood in parallel with maturation of prefrontal brain areas and metacognitive sophistication. Okay, so let's go to the second section, which is on grit. So the authors are presenting the information in sections. Okay, so a newer literature has begun to explore the consequences of pursuing a passionate interest with determination and effort over the course of years. Grit and related constructs are associated with lifetime educational attainment. So there's your difference. If you go back, that self-control is associated with positive life outcomes, right? Positive life outcomes, here are the definitions of what that looks like. Grit, on the other hand, is related to lifetime educational attainment and professional success. There's a difference, meaning that it takes a lot longer utilizing grit to accomplish the success that you want. Prospective longitudinal studies show that grit predicts the completion of challenging goals despite obstacles and setbacks. For instance, now the authors are giving you examples of what grit looks like in contrast to what you saw, self-control. So self-control is just controlling momentary impulses. Grit looks like grittier high school juniors in the Chicago public schools are more likely to graduate on time 1 year later. Grittier cadets are more likely than less gritty peers to make it through their first arduous summer at West Point. And then grittier novice teachers are more likely to stay in teaching. Among the teachers who do stay, those who are grittier are more effective. So these are the definitions for what grit looks like, or examples of what grit looks like. Okay. Research on grit is still in its infancy, and much remains to be discovered about its underlying psychological mechanisms. One study has shown that the National Spelling Bee In the National Spelling Bee, grittier competitors accumulate more hours of deliberate practice over years, which in turn fully mediates the effect of grit on final ranking. So that means this is more definitions of what grit looks like, right? That there's deliberate practice over years. Okay. Related research has identified harmonious passion, autonomous internalization of a passionate activity into one's identity. So this is the person who's going to pursue a dominant goal as a predictor of deliberate practice and in turn performance. Many other studies of expert performers in diverse domains have found that thousands of hours of extremely effortful deliberate practice are prerequisite for achieving world class level world class levels of skill. And so, if as Woody Allen has suggested, showing up is crucial to success in any endeavor, um, and if highly effortful focused practice is a necessary means to improving in skill, then it may be that grit predicts high achievement by inclining individuals to both show up, work very hard continuously toward a high valued goal for years and even decades. Okay, that's your difference between what self control looks like and what grit looks like. So now let's look at the hierarchical goal framework. Again, the authors are still citing conclusions of other works, and then they're going to give you an example of what. Here is a visual of that. So it is perhaps no wonder that self-control and grit are often used interchangeably by lay people and scientists alike. These two determinants of success are highly correlated, and both predict success outcomes over and above intelligence. However, some paragons of self-control lead undistinguished lives devoid of a focused, lifelong passion, and some gritty and exceptionally successful people are famously undisciplined in life domains other than their chosen passion. So, for example, for the self-control person, the person will be on a robot status. They get up, they take a shower, they eat something, they go to work, they clock in. It's 25 years of staying with the same job, no change. May not even move up from their current level to say supervisor or manager, and their lives are just sort of undistinguished. They don't set goals to be higher than what they are. You don't always have to be rich to be higher. You don't always have to be president of the United States to be higher. But there should be some it's distinguishing to you, but it's devoid of a focused lifelong passion. And sometimes these are the people who chase many ideas. They chase many options. These are also the people who may live for the day, that carpe diem, but they never actually accomplish anything. So these are the people who lead undistinguished lives devoid of a focused lifelong passion. But then you have some gritty people who will stay the task and work on something and care to try to work out that math problem or test a hypothesis or try to understand an engineering problem. These are the people who may be gritty, exceptionally successful people are famous, but they are famously undisciplined in life domains other than their chosen passion. And so they are in places where they are not really supposed to be. This is something that I always say when people die of tragedy, that they are usually, when they die of tragedy, they are out of order somewhere in their lives, and they tend to be in places that they're not supposed to be. So the goal would be for you to stay the course with the thing you're already doing, which is where you are actually gritty. But what I said earlier is that people get off that path and get onto another path other than their chosen life passion and do something completely different, right? And so you'll see that as well. That's why I wonder sometimes when people, when they are say unaliving themselves, I thought you were happy in the thing that you were doing, because a lot of times they weren't supposed to be in that. They chose that because of the immediate gratification. Money came to them much earlier than it would had they stayed on the path that was slower, that was going to take a lot more focus and time and grit. Mounting evidence supports this distinction. Domain general measures of self-control are generally more predictive of everyday measures of adapting functioning, so grades, physical health, than are domain general measures of grit. Grit, on the other hand, predicts retention at West Point, performance in the National Spelling Bee when controlling for self-control, but self-control does not predict these outcomes when controlling for grit. So you can have self-control without grit, but you cannot have grit without self-control. That's what they are suggesting here. How are self-control and grit similar and how are they different? We propose that both their similarities and their differences can be understood within a hierarchical goal framework. Following prominent motivational accounts, we assume, and now they are defining what hierarchical goal framework means. So we assume, and it begins here, we assume that goals are typically organized hierarchically with lower order goals serving higher order goals. Lower order goals are more numerous, context specific, short terms, and substitutable, whereas higher order goals are typically fewer in number, more abstract, more enduring, and more important to the individual. Okay, that is your definition from we assume. So lower order goals serving high order goals. Lower order goals are more numerous, context specific, short term, substitutable. Higher order goals are typically fewer in number, more abstract, more enduring, more important to the individual. Okay. At any level in the goal hierarchy, goals are more likely to be activated if they are praised as feasible and desirable. Individuals can have not only multiple goals but also multiple goal hierarchies. This multiplicity of motives can lead to conflict. So if you look at this hierarchical goal framework here, and when you are taking your definition for the paper, you are not taking this definition here. The definition has already been defined within the work. Be sure not to use this definition here. But your these are considered your higher order goals, these three goals here. And these are your lower order goals, and then these are your actions. And this is your subordinate goal here. This is the long-term goal. This is the vision. So if you look at this from an education standpoint, say for instance, you are all going to school, going to college, and so then your degree plan, your your degree, which would be say a bachelor's of or a master's of whatever, that would be the superordinate goal for this 4-year goal plan that you have, right? 4-year goal degree plan. So that means that your actions here are going to be enrollment, registration, selection of courses, and the way that you get here is to sustain everything that you see here, all these actions. Because if you drop out of school, you're going to have to start all over again with certain courses. If you take a semester off, uh, it's going to take some time to catch yourself back up and do prioritize rest and health. But this right here, these actions here under each of these goal hierarchies suggest to you that you have to sustain action to continue to move up. So then these are your lower order goals. And if you're in, say, in school, these will be the lower division courses that you have to take. So your freshman, sophomore courses, your major courses, your elective courses, core electives, major prep. That's this information here. Once you get here, though, where you are now in the major, you don't have time to create a whole bunch of different more goals. You're not going to have a biology uh, degree here. You're not going to have a sociology or a psychology degree unless there is an exception to the rule. Unless you're doing a dual major, then that will be what you do here. And you set that as a goal, and that will be the dual major that you accomplish. But once you're here, you are more focused. You can substitute a lot here in your lower order goals. But once you get here, you have to be focused. You cannot say, okay, I did all this work to become a lawyer, the major prep for the lawyer, but now I'm going to change my mind and I want to become a doctor. You can't start from here, though. You would have to go all the way back down here to start all over to get there. So that would be the education, right? If you were running a business or you wanted to create your own business, then of course you need your licenses. So all these actions, your business plan, your marketing plan, your licenses, your sales and permit use, your business formation, if you're going to be a corporation, LLC, you do all of these different actions here, right? So then you have to set lower order goals. Lower order goals may be sales objectives. It may be networking. What networking would be much higher here, but these are setting sales goals, going out to different areas to sell your products, marketing and promotion, and then you move on up, and now you are at conferences, networking, making relationships, moving from one type of customer to the next customer, and then you have to know what kind of vision do you want to. That's why you need to create a vision statement. Do you want to become the preferred uh, product for a particular consumer, that everyone looks to you? For example, there's a McDonald's in on every continent practically, right? So they are strangely enough, the preferred hamburger, right? Even if you may have an option in another hamburger, but people look to McDonald's as the goal. They look to McDonald's as almost the light in a city, a town, a country, or whatever. And so then all the other burger places and food places are competing with McDonald's. So that means you have to set the vision, and that takes longer. That's going to take a long time. If you want to just have a business, be a business owner, then you're basically giving yourself a job. But if you want to be an industry leader, then that's going to take a long time. So all these actions here, all these lower order goals here, even the higher order goals represent, these are your self-control goals. This superordinate goal that you see here, that's a grit goal. And so if you're on the education side, it's going to take 4 to 5 years. But if you want to become an industry leader, it could take you 10, 15, 20 years. If you want to become CEO of a company, a brand company, that could take almost 25 years. That's a grit goal. So keep the difference in mind. So within this framework, self-control refers to the successful resolution of a conflict between two action impulses, one that corresponds to a goal that is more valued in the moment, and another that corresponds to a goal that is of a greater enduring value. For example, Monday Morning may find the first author torn between editing the methods section of her graduate student's manuscript, or alternatively, checking US Weekly for the latest Hollywood gossip. The former action is more valuable in the long run, advancing the goals of supporting her students' development and of publishing empirical studies. In contrast, the rival action is momentarily more alluring, guaranteed to be effortless and amusing, but alas, in the long run, less valuable insofar as it merely advances the goal of having fun. So, whether by modulating her action tendencies in the heat of the moment, or preferably by deploying cognitive and behavioral self control strategies earlier in the time, the first author hopes to exercise self control and choose the manuscript over the tabloid. Okay, so that means when we are essentially confronted with a rival goal, which would be defined as an alluring goal, we have to make a decision, a conscious, conscientious, focused, decisive decision to focus on the more valued goal. Okay. And then in the same framework, grit entails having a dominant superordinate goal, producing useful new insights into the psychological determinants of success, and tenaciously working toward it in the face of obstacles and setbacks, often for years or decades. This superordinate goal sits at the top of a well-organized goal hierarchy in which lower order goals are tightly aligned with the superordinate goal, and these lower order goals in turn give rise to effective actions that advance the individual toward the subordinate goal. So everything that you're doing is advancing you towards that larger goal that you see. As shown in Figure 3A, gritty individuals either are able to actively suppress rival subordinate goals, or consistent with descriptions of eminently productive individuals, lack competing subordinate goal. So let's skip down a little bit. So in not completing. So the figure illustrates how this subordinate goal impels gritty individuals when faced with setbacks to find a way. That's very important, to find a way forward by sprouting new lower order goals or actions when a current lower order goal or action is blocked. So for instance, find a way, meaning that if you find someone who stopped midway in the process because something happened with their initial goal and they can't achieve it in the time frame they think they can achieve it, or some class happened, some health issue happened, or something like that, the grittier person is going to find a way. They're going to find a way to still accomplish the goal. They're not going to be deterred so easily just because it didn't happen in the way that they wanted it to happen. They're going to find a way. They're going to sprout a newer, lower order goal when a current lower order goal is blocked, meaning that's why the lower order goals are substitutable. They're substitutable. You can change them out. It's only when you get to the higher order where you have to get more focused. For instance, if a grant proposal or manuscript is rejected, tears may be shed. But soon enough, another funder or journal outlet is identified and pursued. In other words, in a gritty individual's, in a gritty individual's domain of passionate interests, goals, or actions deemed unfeasible are met with the response of an active search for or even invention of viable alternatives. In other words, you're the type of person you're going to get it done. You're not going to cheat your way, but you're going to find a way to get it done. That's a grit person. When, in terms of a person understanding the difference in controlling momentary impulses. And so this is the last one I want to work on, and you can read this for yourself. Viewed in this light, it is evident that self-controlling grit both involve the defense of valued goals in the face of adversity. Where they principally differ is in the types of goals that are being defended, the nature of the enemy, and the time scale that is involved. Self-control is required to adjudicate between lower level goals entailing necessarily conflicting actions. One cannot eat one's cake and have it later too. In contrast, grit entails maintaining allegiance to a highest level goal over long stretches of time and in the face of disappointments and setbacks. So you're in med school, you are running into problems with a supervising physician, you may be running into problems with testing, trying to get your license, things like that. Regardless, you still want to become a doctor. You still have loyalty to this idea, this superordinate goal, this vision of yourself of being a doctor, and you're just going to get it done. So let's look at the alternatives then. The alternative to exercising self-control is indulging in an action that immediately satisfies a goal but is soon regretted. Okay. The alternative to grit is following a series of different superordinate goals in rapid succession, law school 1 month, med school the next, or giving up on a superordinate goal because the means to the end of that goal have been blocked. It follows that self-control is more tightly coupled with everyday success, meaning that you are managing yourself every day. You get up, you work on your gym activity, you work on your schoolwork, you work on your marriage, you work on your relationship, you work on your kids. That is you activating self-control for everyday success. Whereas grit is more tightly coupled with exceptional achievements that often take decades or even an entire lifetime to accomplish. So when you think about Queen Elizabeth, who recently died, she died off the job. She was tasked with becoming queen because her uncle abdicated the throne and married someone else, and he didn't want to be king, and so then she was next in line, and she took on the task to become queen for many years, and then she didn't quit. She didn't take days off. She stayed the course from the time she started. She had kids. She was married. She had kids. She had different issues. Their kids had kids. There were conflict. There were shame. There was all kinds of stuff. But she still stated she did not retire. Instead, she died off the job. And so for your case, it depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether you will need to pass the baton or eventually die off the job. For me, I'm a teacher. My gift is teaching. My talent is writing. So I'm both teacher and writer. And so I'm going to retire in teaching. I may do other things that may be business related, especially related to writing books and promoting books and writing scripts, etc. But my profession and my teaching and my lifelong passion, what I study for, what I plan for, is something that I'm going to die off the job. And so that is something that's going to take my entire lifetime to accomplish. So let's go back a little bit. Just do a recap. So we are in this article, Self-Control and Grit, but Separable Determinants of Success. This is the title of the article. and is formatted in quotation marks, and it is housed within a larger journal article, Current Directions in Psychological Science. This information can be found. It was published October 2014 in volume 23, issue 5, on page numbers. This is the URL for this, and I mean, this is the DOI for this. This is also the URL here. And then you have Angela Duckworth and James J. Gross in first author and second author. So then we want to make sure that we are defining the work within the context, defining inner terms within the context of the work. So self-control, the capacity to regulate attention, emotion, and behavior in the presence of temptation, is defined here. It's also defined here. Self-control entails aligning actions with any value goal despite momentarily more alluring alternatives. Okay. And so you would add quotation marks, add a citation. Grit is defined. Grit, the tenacious pursuit of a dominant subordinate goal despite setbacks, is defined here. It's also defined here. Grit entails having and working assiduously toward a single challenging subordinate goal through thick and thin on a time scale of years or even decades, right? That's how the authors are defining it. And then the thesis for the work, or the author's purpose for writing, is to basically show you that self-control and grit are strongly correlated, but not perfectly so, meaning that they are not identical, and we need to continue to stop using them identically. So remember that the authors are presenting historical information, but you have to know the difference between when the authors are speaking and when the historical information is speaking. So the information is presented in past tense, but then the authors switch to now and then switch to today, and how we should now look at these two terms. Okay, yes, you can reach success using a self-control goal, and yes, you can reach success using a grit goal, but what you accomplish and achieve are two different things. So we understand that grit is associated with positive life outcomes. I mean, self-control is associated with positive life outcomes, and is further defined as later academic achievement and attainment, employment earnings, savings, physical health, and then general intelligence or socioeconomic status. That's how they are defining positive life outcomes. And so also remember, if we are adjudicating, we are taking a lot more time utilizing self-control to make a decision. Okay. We're also making sure that if we are using terms specific to the work, like alluring goal and value goal, we are formatting those terms in quotation marks because they are specific to the work. Okay. And then grit is and its related constructs associated with lifetime educational attainment and professional success. And so then the authors are defining grit in terms of examples. So there's grittier high school juniors, public schools, grittier cadets, grittier novice teachers, grittier national spelling bee competitors. These are how they are defining it. And they are further defining it as that highly effortful, deliberate, focused practice of improving skill, working hard continuously toward a highly valued goal for years and even decades. So then we have hierarchical goal framework. We have the distinction here, but the most important aspect of it is how they are defining it. Lower order goals serving higher order goals. Lower order goals are more numerous, context specific, short term, substitutable, whereas higher order goals are typically fewer in number, more abstract, more enduring, more important to the individual. That is the definition there. Okay. And then just more examples of how to understand hierarchical goal framework, and using, knowing the distinction between grit and self-control goals, right? And definitely paying attention to the alternatives to grit. So alternative to exercise self-control is indulging in an action that immediately satisfies the goal but is soon regretted. Like, you need to do your homework, but as soon as you decide to turn on the TV, you already regret it. And then the alternative to grit is following a series of subordinate goals in rapid succession. Law school 1 month, med school the next, or giving up on a superordinate goal because the means to the end of that goal have been blocked. So the most important thing is going back to where I think I saw that when you are faced with a setback, you find a way. You find a way to, you may have to sprout new lower order goals. You may have to change them out, substitutable. substitutable, but you find a way to get it done. So this is a lecture for self-control and grit related but separable determinants of success.